Bonjour, this is Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast. This is the podcast that's all about the cuisine that is said to have founded modern cooking. French ingredients and dishes have been the starting block for many of the world's best chefs and cooks. And on Fabulously Delicious, we'll learn all about those dishes and ingredients, as well as get to know more about fabulous French foodies. I'm your host, Andrew Pryor. Enchanté.
Enchanté.
My life changed when I competed on MasterChef Australia, and now I'm living my best life right here in the French countryside. Cooking, eating, meeting wonderful local food producers, chefs, home cooks, drinking amazing wines, eating some of the oval. Would you believe there's more than 1,500 French cheeses? Yum. Trying to eat them all for you. And of course, I'm trying to share these fabulous experiences with you, my fabulously delicious audience. I hope you're enjoying them. Today, the holiday season is of course here, and what better way to celebrate than with a deep dive into one of France's most cherished festive traditions, an aromatic spiced bread that is more than just a holiday treat. It's a rich tapestry of history, culture, and flavour that stretches far beyond France's borders. Sit back, turn the volume up. If you're not driving, pour yourself a glass of wine, add a bit of saucisson maybe, and some of that delicious cheese, baguette, and enjoy today's episode of Fabulously Delicious, the French food podcast, Pain d'épices. The festive season brings a sense of magic, doesn't it? Here in France, one culinary tradition that fills homes and the hearts, as well as stomachs, with warmth is pain d'épices, a fragrant spiced bread that's both nostalgic and timeless. Its rich history, incredible versatility, and unmistakable flavour make it a cornerstone of French food culture. But pain d'épices is more than just a treat for special occasions. It's a delicious bridge between the past and the present, a food that has stood the test of time whilst remaining a vital part of French culinary traditions. So let's explore its origins, its place in French cuisine, and why it's a favourite for so many. Pain d'épices is spelled pain, which is P-A-I-N, which means bread in French, and d'épices, spelled D'-E-P-I-C-E-S, which in French means spice. It can also be called pain d'épices, but without the S. This is the French version of gingerbread, but unlike other European-style gingerbreads, this has a lot of different spices added to it, usually green anise or anise vert as one of the main different spices added. It is also more of a cake or bread than a biscuit. France is a country that celebrates its regional specialties, and pain d'épices is no exception. In the Alsace region, it's common to find versions studded with dried fruits or candied orange peels, adding a festive twist. These loaves are often enjoyed during the Christmas season, paired with mulled wine or a hot cup of spiced cider. In Brittany, bakers sometimes use buckwheat flour alongside of rye, giving the bread a unique nutty flavour. And Breton versions are also darker and denser, and this reflects the region's rustic culinary traditions. Even within Dijon, which is arguably the capital of pain d'épices, now here in France, there are subtle differences. Some bakers add a splash of local brandy or wine to their recipes, infusing the bread with a hint of regional terroir. Originally, the pain d'épices was a sourdough that had no leavening agent added to it. It would be left in a wood bowl and rested in a cool place for months on end, whilst the rye flour fermented. They would then bake the loaf in molds. Nowadays, they use baking soda or baking powder to rise the cakes. There is a version of pain d'épices made specifically by the honey merchants here in France, and this loaf is called the pain d'épices de miel. The pain d'épices is sweetened only with honey, has a much more rich or heavier, some would say, full-bodied taste to it because of the honey. Whilst pain d'épices feels is quintessentially French today, its story begins much earlier, tracing back thousands of years to ancient civilizations. In Egypt, honey was highly prized, not just as a sweetener, but as a sacred ingredient. The Egyptians baked honey-sweetened breads, offering these to their gods and sustenance for the elite. The Greeks and Romans adopted similar traditions. Spices were added to honey cakes, which became part of the culinary repertoire. Honeyed bread was even said to have medicinal purposes, believed to restore energy and vitality. But the journey of pain d'épices truly shook shape when these ancient recipes merged with the rich spice trade that flourished during the Middle Ages. By the 10th century in China, a honey and spice bread known as mikong had captured the attention of travelers and merchants. This delicacy, made with wheat, honey, and local spices, became a prized export along the Silk Road. Through trade routes, this concept reached Europe, where medieval bakers embraced the combination of honey, spices, and bread. But in France, it found its true home, evolving into the pain d'épices that we know today. Pliny the Elder reports that Romans knew the panis militus, a fried bread sprinkled with honey, and however, they were only the precursors of the current gingerbread. During the Middle Ages, spiced honey breads became synonymous with luxury and celebration. In Burgundy, Champagne, and the Alsace, regions that are already famous for their gastronomy, pain d'épices took on a unique identity. It wasn't just the Crusaders who brought back exotic spices like cinnamon and cloves that popularized the bread. Monastic communities played a pivotal role. Monks, known for their expertise in fermentation and preservation, began perfecting recipes for spice breads, often using rye flour, which was abundant and hearty. The use of honey rather than sugar was also significant. Honey was more than a sweetener. It was a natural preservative, making the bread ideal for long winters and travel. Pain d'épices became a symbol of hospitality that was gifted during holidays and shared at feasts. Reims, the capital of Champagne, became an early hub of pain d'épices production. By 1571, the Guild of Pain d'Épiciers was established, setting strict regulations on how the bread could be made. This ensured quality and preserved its reputation as a beloved regional speciality. Yes, there was a corporation of spiced bread makers, apparently. And this corporation separated itself from other chefs and bakers and just focused on spiced bread makers. And then in 1596, a faction from Paris separated to form their own chapter. Unfortunately, in World War I, the Reims production industry was devastated. Magloune Toussaint Samar, a French historian and writer that focuses on food, cuisine, and its history in France, wrote that the commercial production of pain d'épices was a speciality from Reims. And this recipe, as it is said, is based on one made by a pastry cook in Bourges, who cooked it for Charles VII and his mistress, Agnes Sorel. Agnes apparently really loved it, and this helped with its popularity. The flour used in this bread was the dark buckwheat flour of Brittany. Going back in history before the war, during the Napoleonic era, the pain d'épices took off in Dijon, and it quickly overtook the other manufacturers and read from other regions, and became the speciality of the city of Dijon and the surrounding area. As time marched on, Dijon emerged as the undisputed capital of pain d'épices, and whilst the town was already famous for its mustard, its spice bread industry flourished during the 18th and 19th centuries. Dijon bakers were known for their innovations, incorporating new spice and methods that elevated the bread to an art form. But Dijon's version of pain d'épices isn't just about flavor, it's about craftsmanship. The bread is baked with precision, its texture dense yet tender, and its sweetness subtle yet profound. In Dijon, and more specifically in the nearby city of Bourne, I had the pleasure of visiting with a group of French food lovers the Moulot et Petitjean store. Its history goes back a long way. It's said that the 14th century Margaret of Flanders, the wife of Duke Philip the Bold, loved the bouchet, which was a wheat flour and honey bread made in Dijon. A variant of this bread made with millet flour was known as the pain de Gouderay. Barnaby Boitier, who was from Lange, started the commercial manufacture of gingerbread in Dijon, and in 1804 published an ad in Le Journal de l'Écoute saying, Mr. Botier manufactured gingerbreads of all kinds. Ways of Reims and Montbelliard makes health gingerbread and all kinds of croquettes in marzipan and orange blossom. He has a large assortment of all of these objects for your perusal. In 1838, his store and manufacturing was taken over by Louis Mulot, and then by his son, who in 1901 passed the business on to his son-in-law, Louis Auguste Petitjean. This began Mulot and Petitjean, which is still making delicious pain d'épices and other treats in Dijon and Born today. This store is a highlight for anybody visiting Born and is a must-do in my opinion. We had organized an English-speaking guide to show us the store and do a tasting when we arrived, but unfortunately, this was not the case. Luckily though, as my French wasn't really that great back then, in 2015, my husband, who was with us, he on the spot took over the job of translating for us. We learned all about the store's history and tasted some delicious pain d'épices, which I then became firmly in love with. The Dijon gingerbread is set apart from others as it's made with a sourdough, wheat flour, and has honey and sugar added to it. This is all mixed together and left for 2 weeks before egg yolk, spices, including anise vert, are added to it. By using the sourdough method, there's apparently 3% less fat in the pain d'épices than other pain d'épices. Mulot and Petitjean is now the only artisanal gingerbread factory left in the city of Dijon. If you're having gingerbread that's made in Reims, it can only be called Reims gingerbread and has to be made from rye flour. Whereas Dijon gingerbread is reserved for pain d'épices that's made with wheat flour, and the Reims gingerbread has no eggs, butter, or milk added to it. Are you dreaming of cooking in a charming French town? Well then, why not come to Montmorillon and cook with me? You could make your dream a reality with my fabulous Vienne residencies that run from May to October. I invite you to experience a delightful stay for either 3 nights or 5 nights that includes accommodation, a welcome apéro, and all-day cooking classes, as well as a tour of the local region. Come join me for an unforgettable journey of flavors, friendship, and more detail. Of flavors and friendship. For more details, visit andrewpryorfabulously.com. I can't wait to cook with you all. At its heart, pain d'épices is a simple creation. Rye flour, honey, and a blend of spices. But simplicity, as any great chef will tell you, is where true genius lies. Rye flour gives the bread its characteristic density and nutty flavor. Unlike wheat, rye produces a slightly tangy taste which pairs beautifully with the sweetness of the honey. Speaking of honey, it's the soul of the pain d'épices. The type of honey used can vary from lighter honeys, which lend a mild sweetness, and darker varieties like chestnut honey that add depth and complexity. And then there are the spices: cinnamon, cloves, ginger, nutmeg, and anise are all common. But every baker has their secret blend. In Alsace, bakers often include a hint of cardamom, whilst in Provence, you might find lavender honey lending a floral note to the bread. The dough is traditionally fermented, a practice that dates back centuries. This not only enhances the flavor, but it also gives the bread its long shelf life, a practical feature in pre-refrigeration days. What makes pain d'épices truly remarkable is its versatility though. In French cuisine, it's far more than a simple loaf. It's an ingredient that can transform a dish. One of the most iconic pairings is pain d'épices with foie gras. The sweetness of the bread complements the rich, buttery flavor of the foie gras, creating a luxurious balance of flavors. This pairing is a staple on holiday menus and is often served at fine dining restaurants. Cheese lovers also adore pain d'épices. A slice of this spiced bread with a wedge of Roquefort or a creamy brie is nothing short of heavenly in my opinion. The sweetness of the bread tempers the saltiness of the cheese, creating a perfect harmony. But let's not forget dessert. How could we forget the dessert? Crumbled pain d'épices can be used as a topping for ice cream, a base for cheesecakes, or even layered into trifles, if you like that sort of thing. In some French patisseries, you'll find pain d'épices macarons, a modern twist on a classic. For many families in France, baking pain d'épices is a cherished holiday tradition. Children help mix the dough, whilst the parents carefully measure out the spices. The aroma of the bread baking in the oven becomes synonymous with Christmas cheer. At Christmas markets across France, stalls selling pain d'épices are a common sight. Wrapped in decorative paper or tins, it's a popular gift, a gesture of warmth and goodwill. And whilst pain d'épices is quintessentially French, its appeal and legacy resonate across borders, inspiring similar spice traditions and sweet treats worldwide. The universality of spiced breads lies in its comforting warmth and adaptability, connection to festive celebrations, making it a beloved culinary staple in many cultures. Perhaps the closest relative to pain d'épices is Germany's Lebkuchen. This gingerbread-like treat dates back to the 13th century and shares a similar flavour profile of honey and spices. Unlike the loaf-shaped presentation of the pain d'épices, Lebkuchen is often shaped into cookies or decorative forms. And during the holiday season, Lebkuchen hearts adorned with icing messages are a favourite at German Christmas markets. The connection between Lebkuchen and pain d'épices is not just coincidental. Both draw from medieval European spice blends introduced through the Crusades and the expanding spice trade. In fact, the bakers of Nuremberg, a city renowned for its Lebkuchen, are said to have shared techniques with French bakers during trade fairs in the centuries past. In Sweden, the spice delicacy takes the form of pepparkakor, crisp and wafer-thin cookies, traditionally enjoyed during the holiday season. Pepparkakor shares the warmth of ginger, cloves and cinnamon that's found in the pain d'épices. Swedish folklore suggests that making it was believed to bring good fortune and even foster harmony, an enchanting nod to the joy that baking spice treats brings to households. The Dutch speculus is another cousin of pain d'épices. These spiced cookies pressed into intricate molds depicting windmills or ships or folklore characters are a hallmark of festivities at Christmas. Though cookies are the dominant form, some Dutch bakers create loaf-style versions that bear striking resemblance to the French pain d'épices. Like the French bread, speculus relies heavily on the aromatic allure of spices like cardamom, cloves and nutmeg, paired with brown sugar or honey for sweetness. Interestingly, the molds used for speculus echo the decorative gilding of traditional French pain d'épices tins. The spice bread traditions in Europe owe much to the culinary influence of the Middle East and North Africa. The concept of combining honey with spices in breads has roots in ancient Persian and Arabic cuisines. Dishes like baklava, layered pastry with spiced honey syrups, and cookies with spiced date fillings show how the blend of sweetness and spice has always been celebrated. When European settlers brought their baking traditions to the Americans, spiced breads and cakes evolved yet again. In colonial New England, pain d'épices inspired early versions of gingerbread, which incorporate molasses instead of honey, are often seen. In the southern United States, recipes for ginger-spiced loaf cakes became a mainstay, often flavored with dark treacle. Whilst these adaptations differ slightly from the French roots, they carry the same spirit of warmth, nostalgia, and festivity. What connects these international variations of pain d'épices is their shared role as a symbol of comfort, celebration, and community. Spice breads and cakes are more than just food. They're carriers of culture, bridging past and present, local and global communities. From the bustling Christmas markets of Europe to the aromatic bakeries of Dijon, and from colonial New England, the influence of pain d'épices continues to inspire bakers around the world. Whether as a loaf or a cookie or a cake, the universal language of spice sweetness transcends borders and generations, in my opinion. Here's my favorite recipe and the one that I use all the time for pain d'épices. The ingredients you'll need: 250 grams of honey, 250 grams of all-purpose flour, 100 grams of powdered sugar, 1 tablespoon of vanilla sugar, 1 teaspoon of allspice, ground, a teaspoon of ground ginger, a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, a teaspoon of anise vert or green anise as it's called, ground, a teaspoon of baking powder and a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 2 large eggs and 100 ml of milk. The method? Preheat your oven to 160 degrees Celsius. Fan. Butter and flour a loaf pan. In a small saucepan, heat the honey on medium to low heat. Sift the flour, baking powder, sugar, and the spices into a large bowl. Warm the milk in a small saucepan. Add the honey to the flour bowl and mix with a wooden spoon. Then add the eggs one at a time and mix well. Pour in the milk and mix and stir as you're stirring at the same time. Place the mixture into the loaf pan. Bake in the oven for an hour and test if ready with a toothpick that can be placed in the middle, and if it comes out clean, then it's ready. If not, bake for another 10 minutes and try again. Cool on a rack, and then once it's completely cooled, take out of the pan, wrap in aluminium foil, and place in an airtight container for 24 hours before eating and enjoying. For me, Panda Peace is more than just a food. It's a connection of history, culture, and the joy of sharing something special with loved ones. Whether I'm baking it at home or enjoying a slice from Moulin and Dijon, it never fails to bring a smile to my face. So this holiday season, why not try your hand at making Panda Peace? It's easier than you might think, and the rewards are really well worth the effort. Planning a trip to France, heading to Paris, or maybe you're one of those lucky ones that already live there in this incredible city. I was fortunate enough to call Paris home, and let's be honest, I pretty much ate my way through Paris for you. Now I want to bring all that delicious experience straight to you, my fabulously delicious audience. Because, well, if you're tuning in, I'm guessing you love French food, or just food in general, as much as I do. That's why I wrote my first book, Paris, a fabulous food guide to the world's most delicious city. Inside it, you'll find recommendations for boulangeries, cafes, indulgent chocolate shops, fromageries restaurants, and so much more. There's gourmet kitchen supply stores, wine bars, and food streets. This is a 2025 edition now. I've updated it, and with recommendations that are perfect for your next trip to Paris. Or if you're lucky enough to live there, just to guide you and tell you where to go to eat. There's also a vegan and vegetarian section. You can grab your copy at andrewpryorfabulously.com, where I offer a signed and gift package version, or you can find it on Amazon and a Kindle version for quick, easy access. Happy eating and bon voyage. That's it for another episode of Fabulously Delicious. Had you heard of the Panda Peace before? What's the most fabulous thing you learned from today's episode? Let me know by contacting me via Instagram. Slide into my DMs at Andrew Pryor Fabulously, or you can contact me on email at contact@andrewpryorfabulously.com. I love to chat with you all. We could just have a chat about Panda Peace if you like. I love talking to people about food, and especially French food. Thank you for listening, and remember, you know what my motto is. Whatever you do, do it fabulously. Merci beaucoup, and bon app.